Hello friends, I am glad to see you again. Today I will talk about the homeowners association that built a golf course on my land. I didn't go up to the mountain place for 3 winters in a row, and when I finally did, I thought I'd taken a wrong turn onto a postcard. I parked my dusty truck beside the old gate. 2 cedar posts, a chain, the padlock that sticks unless you talk nice to it, and stared at a neat white flag snapping in the wind. Then another, then a trim strip of emerald grass where my meadow used to roll out like a wool blanket, and then the sound of a tiny engine, a low, cheerful whine like a bee that swallowed a kazoo. A golf cart rolled across my land, on my land. 2 people in polo shirts and windbreakers waved as if I were a misplaced tourist. The driver, sunglasses, perfect tan, pointed his thumb down course, like he had somewhere very important to be. The passenger raised a clipboard stiff with plastic sleeves. I watched the cart bounce past a boulder I'd used as a landmark since I was 12. Someone had fixed a brass cup into the ground near it, painted a ring around the cup, and seeded the soil so smooth it looked like velvet. I was a lot of things in that moment. Confused, dry-mouthed, surprised, a little amused, but I was not loud. Instead, I walked to the old boundary cairn at the corner where my grandfather stacked flat stones long before I was born, and I took out my phone. Photos, slow spans of the ridgeline, close-ups of the flag cups, the cart tracks, the grading cut on the slope, the vandals proud enough to wave, back to the truck for the tape measure I keep coiled under the seat, my notebook, a pencil. I know how to measure from the cairn to the white fir that was once a corner call in a deed. I know the traverse down the creek to the big drift log lodged between 2 rocks. I could hear my grandfather's voice telling me where the line runs, from the cairn due east to where the ridge dips, then dogleg to the creek where the old snag stands sentry. The snag was gone, but the stump was there, scorched at the heart, the annual rings tight as a fist. The cart came back. The driver slowed. "Hey there," he said, smiling like a walking brochure. "You lost?" "Not even a little," I said. "This is my ground." The passenger laughed. No, this is common area." "Common to who?" I asked. "To the community," the passenger said, like that settled everything. She pointed with her pin toward a tidy row of roofs way down the slope, where I knew there'd been nothing but scrub and scattered oaks when I last came up. "We're on a time crunch, okay? We have a charity scramble in 2 weeks. I don't know if you've ever had a stranger inform you that your living room is now someone else's foyer. It feels exactly like that. Air goes thin. Blood goes warm. Jokes you might make die in your mouth." I stood there with my tape measure and my notebook and watched the cart roll away again. And I laughed, because the alternative was unhelpful. I hadn't used this land in years, that's true. Life made a mess. Job shifts, my mom's health sliding downhill and needing me in town, the cabin roof sagging, then the winter roads chewing up radiators. I kept the taxes paid. I told myself I'd fix the roof when I had a weekend. The last time I'd stayed up there, I slept in a tent inside the cabin like a kid. The view could make a person cry. A whole river valley folded at your feet. My grandfather used to say you didn't own land like that so much as hold it between thunderstorms, but the deed still had my name on it. And the taxes had my name on them every March, and I paid them, sometimes with a sigh, sometimes with a grin. The land didn't owe me squat. I owed the land to leave it the way my grandfather taught me to leave it. Apparently, the homeowners association down the slope had a different curriculum. I hiked the perimeter and found more. A tee box carved flat as a tabletop into my south hill. A sand trap? On the mountain, someone trucked beach to my ridgeline. A path graded along the creek that used to run brown in spring and silver in August. Now it ran a weird, cloudy blue like a stale swimming pool. I put a finger in it and smelled chlorine. No joke. My first thought wasn't lawyer, it was mistake. My second thought was insurance. My third thought was my grandfather, laughing in that dry way he had when someone tried something slick. That dog won't hunt. I drove down the slope to the tidy roofs and the glassed-in clubhouse-looking thing with a stone facade that made me think of movie sets. A letter stenciled neat told me the community's name. I won't repeat it. I walked in past racks of branded shirts and boxes of logo balls. Inside was cool air and the squeak of rubber soles. A woman behind a desk smiled like she meant it, but kept her hand on a clipboard like it might bite. I asked for whoever handled property issues. The woman paged someone named Cleo. Cleo came out in a windbreaker and a visor with a handshake that said she'd done this before. "How can I help?" she asked. "You can help by getting your flags and your golf carts off my family's land," I said. No smile, no drama. Just said it. I watched the flit of something behind her eyes. Recognition? Irritation? She looked me up and down. Trail dust on my boots, the tape measure clipped at my belt, the notebook tucked into my back pocket like a carpenter's square. "Our survey shows this is common area," she said carefully. "Your survey is wrong," I said. "We hired a licensed surveyor," she said. "Me too," I lied. "I planned to. I wanted to see who flinched." She didn't. "If you think there's an issue, you can submit a request to our board. We meet the second Wednesday of every month. You'll need to fill out a form." I took her form and her business card and her rehearsed smile, and I left. I sat in my truck and watched a pair of residents, visors and bright shoes, take a swing at my meadow. The man hit clean. The ball rose and arced. My eyes followed it the way you track a rock thrown at your window. On the drive down into town, I called Milo. He's the best surveyor I know because he worked for the old-timers when I was still doing algebra in summer school. He's got a beard that could hide a bird and the patient gait of someone who's followed property lines through blackberries for 30 years. "Hey, Milo," I said. "I've got a corner question." "You got a corner question or you got a corner problem?" he asked. Milo doesn't waste sentences. "Problem," I said. "You still got that cairn up there?" he asked. "I do," I said. "Cairn's fine. Someone built a sand trap below it." He was quiet a beat. "I'll bring the metal detector," he said. "Bet the old nails are still there." That's the thing about boundaries most folks don't know. The old stuff counts more. Stone piles, witness trees, charred stumps, a neighbor's fence that's been there since before you were born. Courts trust those over bright new stakes that somebody set last week for a paycheck. Deeds are words, monuments are facts. I stopped at the county office because that's where facts live if you know where to look and if your shoes are quiet on concrete floors and you bring donuts for the clerk. I handed over a box from the bakery. The tax clerk, a man with cufflinks shaped like tiny hammers, told me the taxes were paid in full. Same name, no delinquent notices. The recorder's office pulled my deed, and then the old deed, and then the older deed that described the boundary by a white fir and a stone pile and a drift log, which made me grin like a thief. I asked for the subdivision plat for the community downslope. The clerk slid it across the counter with a little push, like a bartender with a whiskey. The plat called out the HOA's common area. It stopped painfully short of my ridge. There was a little curve in a line on the page like a smirk. I asked if anyone had recorded any easements across my parcel. An easement is a sliver of permission, a right to cross or to use a slice of someone else's property. Sometimes they're essential. Access to a landlocked lot, utilities. The clerk clicked her mouse, frowned, and shook her head. "Just the old logging easement that expired in '94, she said. "And a document someone filed last week." "Huh. What document?" I asked, and felt something turn in my gut like a gear finding a tooth. "Notice of interest," she said, reading the screen. "Filed by the Community Association," she said their name. "Says it pertains to portions of your parcel." She printed it because she could see my eyebrows try to climb off my face. The paper was exactly what it sounded like, a one-page stink bomb. No legal basis, no metes and bounds, just a vague claim that they had an interest. Stuff like that clouds title, banks flinch, buyers back away. I took a photo of the document and then a photo of the timestamp and filing number. I asked if the clerk would please certify a copy. She said sure and slid me a form. The guy at the copy counter said, "Happens more than you'd think," in a voice like coffee grounds. "Developers like to throw spaghetti." "Spaghetti on my windows," I said. "Courts don't like spaghetti," he said. "They like forks." I called a lawyer on the sidewalk because I needed a fork. I didn't call the fanciest firm in town. I called a woman named Mara who once helped my mom with a guardianship and beat a shady contractor without raising her voice. "What's going on?" she asked. Short version? A homeowners association built a golf course on my land, which I hadn't used for years, I said. I arrived and saw them driving a golf cart on my land in the mountains. I'm the owner. I intend to take them to court. "That's not even the short version," she said dry. "But I get you. Come by tomorrow. Bring whatever you have. Start a folder tonight. Every photo, every receipt, every memory you can anchor. Don't talk to them beyond minimal courtesy. Don't sign anything. Don't threaten. Don't promise. Don't brag. Just document. And if anyone starts moving dirt again, call the county, then me." I spent the afternoon walking the course that wasn't. I found where they'd cut through my fence on the north end and welded a gate into it like I'd been the one to install it and forget. I found tire tracks and a few bright drinks cans and a neat little sign that said, "Please repair divots." I found a trench where a pipe crossed the creek under stacked stones. I heard water hum. I followed the trench and found a pump house tucked into a fold of land, disguised as a maintenance shed with a padlock and a caution sticker that meant someone hoped I'd be impressed enough to walk away. I didn't touch it. I took photos, I backed off and called the county hotline the clerk had printed on a sticky note for me. A very tired man answered. "I think someone's moved or added a creek intake without a permit," I said. Silence. Then a sigh. "Address?" he asked. I gave parcel numbers. "Is it a community downslope?" he asked. I didn't answer that, just repeated my parcel number and my name. He promised someone would look. When I got back to the truck, there was a business card tucked under the wiper. It had a phone number, a first name, Brantley, and a title like Community Operations. On the back, in neat writing, it said, "Call me, we can make this easy." The word easy made me laugh harder than anything else had that day. I took a photo of the card on my hood, the mountain behind it, the sky going amber. I slid the card into my pocket and felt the crisp edge against my thigh as I drove down the mountain. Slow because a deer crossed. Slow because I wanted to watch the light on the ridge. It looked the same as it did when I was 12. Until your eyes fell on the green incisions zigzagging like new stitches. At home, I made a list on a yellow legal pad. The first line, "I am the only owner." I underlined it twice. The second line, "Pay taxes, copy receipts." Third, "Call Milo, survey ASAP." Fourth, "Meet Mara, bring deeds, plat, photos, notice of interest." Fifth, "Buy more donuts." The next morning, Milo and I hiked the ridge with his metal detector and his patience. He found 2 old nails driven into a stump and laughed like he'd found Spanish coin. "They never look," he said. "They look at paper and forget that paper comes after trees." He set a new rebar stake close enough to kiss the old stump and tagged it with a ribbon. Then we walked a straight line to the cairn, and he set another. He grunted at the graded tee box 30 yards past the line. "They move a lot of dirt, but not enough," he said. "That's the story of the world." We pulled a tape from the cairn and went down to the creek. Milo loves creek calls because water's honest. It doesn't sign. It doesn't pretend. We found where their trench angled under my bank. He shook his head. "They're bold," he said. "Embarrassingly," I said. "They'll claim they thought they had an easement," he said. "They don't," I said. "They'll say you didn't use it, so they could," he said. "I pay taxes," I said. "And in this state, if you want to claim adverse possession, you have to do it for a decade and pay my taxes and fence me out. They haven't done any of that. They built a tee box last year." "Good," he said, as if I'd recited a speech he'd assigned. We spent all day walking and measuring. He marked the line with bright ribbon and more rebar, set at smart intervals like the spine in a book. The flags made me feel better. They felt like sentences that end in periods instead of question marks. Late afternoon, 2 carts paused on the fairway that isn't and watched us. The driver shaded his eyes. "You can't be here," he called. "Tell that to my deed," I said without heat. "Tell it to our survey," he said back. Milo didn't look up from his notes. "Surveyors aren't referees," he said under his breath. "We mark. Judges referee." That night at Mara's office, I spread out my papers on her table and told the story the way I'm telling you, minus the deer and the amber light, plus the parts that smell like filings. She asked careful questions. "How long since you last physically occupied the land? Do you have receipts for the taxes? Any written permission granted to anyone to use your land? Any neighbor disputes? Any structures?" I told her about the old cabin, the sagging roof, the tent nights, the iron skillet hung on a nail in the porch post. She smiled at the skillet but wrote down, "Residential structure in disrepair, still present." "Here's what I see," she said when I shut up. "You've got several claims, ejectment to get them off, trespass to land for all the obvious reasons, conversion for any materials they removed, nuisance for interfering with your use and enjoyment, slander of title for that notice of interest, if we can show it's false and malicious, potential claims for statutory timber trespass if they cut trees. We'll get treble damages if the statute applies, injunctive relief to stop them from operating. Maybe unjust enrichment if they made money from events on your land, all anchored in state law. I'll prepare a demand letter for the association's board and copy their manager, plus a notice to preserve evidence, no destroying emails. We'll file suit promptly to keep the initiative." "And the water thing?" I asked. "We'll notify the county and the state water folks," she said. "Separate track, but it adds leverage. If they diverted without permits, that's their headache. You didn't do it." I told her about the card on my windshield. She nodded. "They'll try to buy you cheap," she said. "They'll say it's for the community. They'll say you're selfish. They'll hint you let your land go wild so they made it useful. Keep your powder dry, let me do the talking. I drove home and sat in my kitchen with the window open and the night air folding itself quietly into the room. I propped the photo of the notice of interest next to my coffee mug and looked at it the way you look at a bruise. I thought about a boardroom full of people, a slide deck, someone pointing at my ridge with a laser pointer, someone saying, "Nobody's using it," like that was a magic key. I thought about the arrogance it takes to call a green wound an improvement. I thought about the difference between unused and free for the taking. I wrote one more line on my legal pad, "Big mistake, HOA." Then I turned off the light and slept like someone who's about to run a marathon but hasn't told his legs yet. 2 days later, the board's response landed. A letter with polite fonts and a lot of underlines. It included photocopies of their survey, which was a GPS printout with a squiggly line that hugged my ridge like a snake that overshot lunch. It offered a generous sum for a cleanup conveyance of the disputed strip. It warned that I was interfering with quiet enjoyment. It threatened to fine me under their rules. Mara laughed when she read it. "They can't fine you," she said. "You're not subject to their covenants. And this is survey. Woo," she pointed at their printout. "They're going to regret attaching this." We served them with a lawsuit the next morning. When the process server came back to Mara's office, she handed me the proof of service like a small gift. "Now we're in it," she said. "Don't expect them to fold right away. People like this confuse bluster for backbone." That afternoon, as if on cue, my phone buzzed. A new number, a bright voice. "Hey, this is Brantley," the voice said. "We'd like to sit down and talk without the lawyers. Neighbor to neighbor, you know? Everything goes through counsel," I said, like I was born on a courthouse bench. "You sure you want to go that way?" he asked, the friendliness peeling back a bit. "I'm sure," I said. "You drove a golf cart on my land. You built a tee box on my hill. You pumped water out of my creek. We're past friendly." "You were doing nothing with it," he said, and the way he said nothing made my molars itch. "Wrong," I said. "I was letting it be a mountain." He sighed, and I pictured him staring out at my meadow through tinted glass. "Okay," he said. "Okay." He hung up. It felt like the timer started then. Not a bomb timer. More like a slow cooker. Things began to bubble in ways I could see and ways I couldn't. Residents posted messages on private forums. Someone uglier than necessary shared a photo of my sagging cabin and a caption about squatters. Someone else, braver than they knew, posted a scan of the subdivision plat with a red line circled under it, and the comment, "Why does this not reach the ridge?" Meanwhile, up on the mountain, someone painted over the little signs like they feared words could testify. Someone moved one of Milo's ribbons. I found it fluttering in a patch of blackberries, bright and wrong. I tied it back to the stake tight enough to cut my finger. That Saturday, I hiked up again. At the pump house, a man in a logo hat was fiddling with a valve. He looked up, startled, then wary. "Maintenance," he said by reflex. "Cut it," I said. "You don't have permission to do anything here." He hesitated, then spun the wheel and the hum died. The creek sounded more itself, less trapped. He shrugged. "I just work here," he said. And it didn't matter, but it mattered how he looked down when he said it, like he knew the joke he was in. At the top, I sat on my grandfather's cairn and ate a sandwich from wax paper and waited for the wind to smell like the old resin I remembered. It did. I thought about how I hadn't used the land for years, and how that's not the same thing as abandoning it. I thought about how property rights aren't a buffet you build on someone else's table because they didn't sit down fast enough. I thought about what would feel like justice. Not just money, not just an order, but something that put humility back where it had been missing. When I climbed down, a sheriff's cruiser idled at the gate. The deputy had his hat tipped back and a smile that said he liked his job most days. "Got a call," he said. "Said someone was trespassing on the golf course." I laughed because what else do you do? "That someone was me," I said. "And the golf course is on my land. Lawsuits filed. Temporary restraining order request is in. This is the corner cairn my grandfather set. Want to see my deed?" He took the paper, skimmed it, handed it back carefully like it might be older than him, which it almost was. "I'm not getting in the middle of a civil case," he said. "I'll write a report that I responded. If anyone gives you trouble, call dispatch." "Thanks," I said. He looked at the green strip over my shoulder. "Never thought I'd see this up here," he said. "What's next?" "Court," I said. "Big mistake, HOA." He whistled one note, flat and soft, then drove away. I chain-locked the gate behind him, took a final photo of the low sun over the new flags, and went home to iron my shirt for the hearing. The temporary restraining order hearing was set for a Tuesday morning that felt like the first day of school. Starched shirt, too much coffee? A folder so full of paper it made me lean left. Mara met me on the courthouse steps with a small nod that said both, "We got this," and "Don't talk unless I tell you to." She'd told me to expect theater. She was right. The association's lawyer arrived wearing a suit that probably had its own bank account, followed by a thin man carrying a tube for rolled plans and a woman with a laptop open before she even cleared security. Brantley came too, hair perfect, step brisk, like the hallway was a commercial. The judge was a tall woman with reading glasses on a chain and a voice that could have been used to teach marching. After everyone said their names, Mara went first. She spoke like she was laying bricks. "My client owns the parcel identified here," she said, tapping our plat copy. "The Defendant Community Association built golf course features on his land without consent and filed a notice of interest clouding his title. We seek a temporary restraining order enjoining any further use or occupation of the parcel and preservation of the status quo pending a preliminary injunction. We have photos, a licensed surveyor's affidavit, county tax records, and a certified copy of the notice the defendant's own documents admit to operation." The other lawyer stood and tried to pull silk out of his pocket. "There's a dispute of boundaries here," he said, like that was the weather. "Our survey places this area within our common space. We have invested considerable community resources. The plaintiff has not used this land in years and did not object until after the course was substantially complete. We ask the court to deny the extraordinary relief requested." The judge's eyebrows did a little dance at extraordinary. "Counsel," she said, "it might be helpful to view the survey exhibits." The thin man with the plan tube unrolled something across the tables, and we all leaned over it like kids looking at pirate maps. Mara's finger traced my boundary. The other lawyer's hand hovered over a wavy line as if by hovering he could convince it to move. "Where are the monuments?" the judge asked. Mara slid over photos, Milo's rebar, the cairn, the stump with nails. "Old monuments, Your Honor," she said, "consistent with the deed calls. Our surveyor's affidavit describes the ties. The defendant's exhibit lacks monument references. It appears to be a GPS overlay drawn to accommodate their built features." The judge looked at the photos long enough to make everyone shift in their chairs. Then she turned to the HOA's lawyer. "And the notice of interest your client filed against the plaintiff's parcel?" He smiled like he wanted to be anywhere else. "A precautionary filing," he said. "We believe precautionary filings that cloud title without a legal basis tend to be frowned upon in this courthouse," the judge said, "particularly when accompanied by physical encroachment and construction." She took off her glasses and looked directly at Brantley, who was trying to look harmless. "Tell your board, when in doubt about a boundary, you come to court before you move dirt." We got our TRO. The order enjoined the association from operating, maintaining, or accessing any portion of my parcel, prohibited them from altering evidence, and required them to shut down any irrigation intake or pump affecting my creek. The judge set a date for a preliminary injunction hearing in 3 weeks and told counsel to confer about preservation and access for surveyors. As we walked out, Mara squeezed my shoulder once, brief as a period at the end of a sentence. "That buys us breathing room," she said. "Now we press." Breathing room lasted 3 hours. That afternoon I got a text from a number I didn't know. A photo of the pump house door, lock cut, the wheel turned. I called the number. A voice I recognized from the "I just work here" guy said, "They sent me up to keep the grass alive. I'm not trying to be the villain here." "You saw the order," I said. "You can be a witness instead. Take a time-stamped photo from your phone of the order posted at the gate and the pump off. Email it to Mara. If anyone tells you to turn it back on, tell them you don't want to be held in contempt." He was quiet. Then, "I'll do that," he said. The county moved faster than I expected. 2 days after the hearing, a white pickup with the county seal rolled up the mountain. Code enforcement and a guy from the water office in a ball cap looked at the trench, the pump, the pipe. They asked questions in the bland, methodical way of people who write reports that get read by people who sign fines. The water guy took samples upstream and down. He clicked his tongue at the chlorine smell and didn't look at me when he said, "Diversions without permits are not small problems. Whoever did this is going to have a week." I didn't gloat. I closed my mouth and took photos of them taking photos. When the county hung a bright orange "Stop Work" placard on the pump house and another on the T-box grading cut, I didn't smile either. Smiles are useful later. News travels in small communities in a way you can hear if you leave your window cracked. The next day, parked at the hardware store, I heard 2 residents talking by the bungee cords. "They shut the pump off?" one said, a man with a baseball cap that had never been near a field. How are we supposed to hold the fundraiser? The board promised it was legal, the other said. They said they had paperwork. They always say that, the first guy said, not quite ready to be cynical, but getting there. At home that night, my inbox pinged. Subject line, anonymous. The body of the email said, "You don't know me. I can't use my name. Check your mail tomorrow. I'm sorry." I forwarded it to Mara with the note. Could be a fishing lure, could be bait, could be real. She sent back 2 words. Open carefully. The packet that came the next day was a plain envelope with no return address and the kind of stamp you buy in rolls. Inside, printouts of emails, pages clipped so neatly they looked like they'd been ironed. The emails were between board members and Brantley. One early one was friendly. Photos of the ridge, little hearts next to the phrase, viewshed activation. Then an email from the course designer saying, "We're tight against the boundary here." Then a reply from Brantley, "Push it, we'll fix the paperwork later." Owner hasn't been around in years. Then a board member named in the email, first names only, responding, "What if he shows up?" And Brantley, "He won't, and if he does, we'll make him an offer." My hands shook a little as I read. Not anger, more that cold that shows up when a doctor confirms what you already knew, but hoped was wrong. I scanned the packet and emailed it to Mara. She called within 5 minutes. "If these are authentic and they didn't preserve them after our hold letter, that's spoliation," she said. "And it shows intent. This isn't we thought we were right. It's we gambled." Judges hate being cleanup crews for gambles. 3 hours later, the HOA's council moved to seal privileged communications inadvertently disclosed. Mara laughed. "They're trying to cram toothpaste back into the tube," she said. "Also, these aren't attorney emails. They're board chatter. We'll let the judge decide." Meanwhile, ordinary life kept me stitched together. I went to the dentist. I took my mom to her appointment and balanced a magazine on my knee while she told the nurse about my grandfather's cairn like it was a relative. I fixed the hose that had been misting the driveway all week. Then I drove to the ridge and posted no trespassing, private property signs at the corners and along the line, spaced exactly as the statute requires. Black on white, no threats, just facts you can read from the fence. On the way down, a woman with silver-streaked hair and a tiny dog waved me at a gate. "Juniper," she said, no last name, living just past the HOA line, but practically a world away. She had watched the trucks and sod rolls and the promises that hardened into members only. When I told her about the court order, her shoulders dropped. "Good," she said. "I thought I was the only one who cared if the creek still sounded like itself." She sent me to Hollis, a retired forester with a knee brace and a ledger-straight memory. "They pushed Phil into the draw," he said. "Told the inspector when I saw him. He wrote it down." At the preliminary injunction hearing, the HOA's lawyer tried magic words: prescriptive easement, implied dedication, acquiescence. Mara popped each bubble with case law and plain sense. "They broke ground last year," she told the judge. "They never paid a dime of my client's taxes and there was no permission." The judge asked for receipts. Mara dealt them like cards. The order came. Preliminary injunction granted. Remove equipment, stay off the parcel, consider removing encroachments before trial. Next day, the board blasted a mass email framing me as an outsider who wouldn't engage constructively, promising all appropriate permits and a quick win. I drank coffee and wondered how often those lines appear minutes before the wheels come off. Then insurers entered the chat. The HOA tendered the claim. The carrier politely highlighted the intentional acts exclusion. Translation: "You built on land you didn't own. We may not pay to fix it." Mara arched an eyebrow. "If coverage is denied, they'll try to special assess," she said. "That will be unpopular." The county issued violations for the creek diversion and unpermitted grading. Fines per day, per hole. The state water office sent its own letter about unauthorized appropriation. Bureaucracy gets mocked until it's the only voice in the room speaking fluent consequence. Around town, the mood shifted. At the hardware store, Kellen, the visor guy from day one, sidled over by the bulk nails, told the board this was a bad idea. He muttered, "They represent the loud folks who show up. I'm not out to ruin anyone's Saturday," I said. "You're out to keep what's yours," he answered. "There's a difference." Discovery started. We asked for minutes, invoices, emails, field notes. We got some. Others were missing. Conveniently, the ones after Milo staked the line. Mara moved for sanctions. Depositions widened the cracks. The designer admitted he'd warned them to avoid the ridge and was told to proceed. When Brantley sat, Mara slid the anonymous email across the table. "Push it. We'll fix the paperwork later. Owner hasn't been around in years." He stared and delivered the oldest line in that theater. "I don't recall. Someone keyed my truck, a single childish stripe. I didn't post photos. I filed a report, called my insurer, and let Ridge Wind cool me off." Then the rain spoke. "Friends, thank you. See you soon."